My name is Juliana. I am 34 years old from Chicago, and I have always been the family disappointment. Despite my academic achievements and hard work, nothing was ever good enough. When I arrived at my parents' luxury home for our traditional family dinner last month, I felt anxious but hopeful. I had exciting news to share about my career, but before I could speak, my father sneered across the table. "How does it feel being useless?" Everyone laughed. I finally responded. "How does it feel knowing this useless one will not be paying your bills anymore? If you are enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you are watching from. Now let me take you back to the beginning so you can understand how we got here. Growing up in an affluent Chicago suburb, my childhood looked picture perfect from the outside. My father, Thomas, was a prominent surgeon at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, known throughout the Midwest for his groundbreaking cardiac procedures. My mother, Diana, built a real estate empire from scratch, becoming one of the top-selling luxury property moguls in the Chicago area. Our home was featured in design magazines, and my parents' social calendar was filled with charity galas and country club events. In our family hierarchy, everyone had their place. My older brother Adam was the golden child who followed directly in my father's footsteps. From the time he could talk, Adam wanted to be a doctor. He memorized anatomical terms instead of nursery rhymes and received a child-sized lab coat for his 6th birthday that he wore until it literally fell apart. My father beamed with pride at every science fair victory and perfect report card, often introducing him as Dr. Adam Stewart Jr. before he had even finished high school. My younger sister Sophia was the family beauty with our mother's auburn hair and our father's striking blue eyes. From an early age, she was enrolled in child modeling dance classes and beauty pageants. My mother spared no expense on her wardrobe and grooming, proudly displaying her trophies and competition photos on a special shelf in our living room. By 16, Sophia had appeared in several national commercials and had been scouted by top modeling agencies. She eventually chose to work in fashion marketing, which my parents considered an acceptable use of her attributes. Then there was me, the middle child Juliana. From as early as I can remember, I wanted to be a writer. I filled notebooks with stories, spent weekends at the library, and created elaborate fictional worlds in my head. When I was 10, my English teacher, Mrs. Abernathy, called my parents to tell them I had extraordinary talent after I wrote a short story that made her cry. My parents listened politely on the phone, then told me writing was a nice hobby, but not a real career path. The pattern of belittling comments started in earnest during high school. While my classmates' parents proudly displayed their artwork or writing awards, mine were noticeably absent from our walls. When I won the state journalism competition my junior year, my father glanced at the trophy and asked, "Do they give these out to everyone?" When I was accepted into 7 colleges, including 2 Ivy Leagues, my mother sighed and said, "Such a shame you are not interested in medicine or business. What a waste." I chose Northwestern University on a journalism scholarship, just a 40-minute drive from my parents' home. Adam had gone to Harvard for undergrad before returning to Northwestern for medical school. Sophia would later attend NYU. My parents attended none of my college events, not even my graduation. I still remember scanning the audience foolishly, hoping they might have changed their minds and shown up as a surprise. They had a charity golf tournament that day, my mother later explained without apology. I moved out at 22 with barely any support. While Adam had a fully furnished condo purchased by my parents, and Sophia received a generous monthly allowance, I started with secondhand furniture in a tiny studio apartment with 2 roommates. My parents made it clear that following my own path meant doing so without their financial backing. Financial independence was the first painful but necessary step toward emotional independence. The next few years were a struggle. I worked multiple jobs while building my portfolio as a freelance writer. I wrote blog posts, website copy, restaurant reviews, anything that would pay. Some months I barely made rent. During one particularly difficult winter, my heat was shut off for 3 days until my next paycheck cleared. When I reluctantly called home, my father said, "Maybe this will teach you the value of practical career choices," before hanging up. I maintained minimal contact with my family after that, limiting our interactions to major holidays and occasional family gatherings. Each encounter followed the same script. Questions about my career were asked not out of interest, but as setups for humiliation. "So you are still doing that writing thing?" My mother would ask with a dismissive wave of her diamond-covered hand. My father preferred direct attacks. "Journalism is a dying field, Juliana. Even if you were good at it, which is debatable, it would still be a poor choice." Every family gathering ended with me crying in my car afterward, questioning my choices and my worth. Yet something in me refused to give up on my dreams. I kept writing, kept pitching, kept building my skills and contacts. What my family never bothered to notice was that I was actually good at what I did. Really good. After years of persistence, I finally got my breakthrough. A personal essay I wrote about resilience caught the attention of a major publisher. After several meetings and a nail-biting bidding war, I signed a contract for my first book, a collection of essays on modern womanhood and finding your voice. The advance was substantial, 6 figures substantial. Beyond the money, this was validation of everything I had worked for, dreamed of, and been ridiculed for wanting. I had just signed the contract the week before that fateful family dinner. For once, I was actually excited to see my family. Despite everything, some childish part of me still craved their approval, or at least their acknowledgement. I thought finally they would see that my path was valid too. I could not have been more wrong. The day of the dinner, I arrived at my parents' Lakeshore Drive mansion, feeling a mixture of anxiety and cautious optimism. The sprawling limestone home overlooked Lake Michigan, with perfectly manicured gardens and a circular driveway filled with luxury vehicles. I parked my modest Honda Civic behind my brother's Tesla and took several deep breaths before ringing the doorbell. Our housekeeper, Maria, answered, her face lighting up when she saw me. Maria, I am convinced, was the only person in that house who ever truly supported my dreams. She used to secretly put my stories on the refrigerator when my parents were out and quietly remove them before they returned. "Maria, so good to see you," I said, accepting her warm hug. "The family is in the sitting room, miss. Your Aunt Patricia just arrived too." Maria gave my hand a quick squeeze. She had always been perceptive about the family dynamics. The sitting room buzzed with conversation that noticeably dimmed as I entered. My mother rose from her designer armchair, her face already set in the tight smile she reserved for obligatory social interactions. "Juliana, you made it." She air-kissed near my cheeks, careful not to smudge her lipstick. Her critical gaze swept over me. "That outfit is certainly comfortable looking." Translation: "You look sloppy and underdressed." I had actually put significant effort into my appearance, wearing a new navy blue dress that had cost more than I usually spent on clothes, but nothing was ever quite good enough. My father barely looked up from his conversation with my brother. "Hello, Juliana." He raised his whiskey glass slightly in my direction, before continuing their discussion about a complicated procedure Adam had assisted with that week. My sister Sophia floated over model-esque in a designer outfit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. "Jules," she exclaimed with practiced enthusiasm, using the nickname she knew I disliked. "It has been forever. You simply must tell me what you have been up to. Any exciting men in your life?" Before I could answer, she interrupted. "You should let me set you up with someone from my office. I know the perfect guy who loves artsy types." She emphasized artsy, like it was a mild disability, one learned to work around. "Thank you, but I am actually seeing someone." I lied anything to avoid another of Sophia's catastrophic setups. Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, and the family rebel who had dared to become a university professor instead of entering the family business, approached with genuine warmth. "Juliana's sweetheart." Her hug was real, not the stiff social embrace my mother offered. "I have been following your bylines. That piece you did on urban food deserts was remarkable." "Patricia," my mother interrupted. "No shop talk before dinner. You know the rules." She steered my aunt away, leaving me alone again. The pre-dinner cocktail hour stretched painfully as I tried repeatedly to find an opening to share my news. Each attempt was thwarted by interruptions, dismissals, or simple lack of interest. My father held court discussing hospital politics. My mother flitted about ensuring everything was perfect. Adam bragged about a diagnosis he had made that had stumped his attending physician. and Sophia documented everything for her Instagram followers. When we finally moved to the dining room, I gasped despite myself. The table setting was spectacular, with my mother's best china crystal glasses that caught the light from the chandelier, and fresh flower arrangements cascading down the center of the table. A staff of 3 servers moved silently around us, filling water glasses and wine goblets. I was seated between my mother's cousin Elaine, who was visiting from Boston, and had never shown any interest in getting to know me and my father's golf buddy Harold, who I suspected did not remember my name. My immediate family sat at the other end of the table, engaged in animated conversation that did not include me. The first course arrived some delicate seafood creation that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. As we ate, my father suddenly addressed me from the head of the table. "So, Juliana," he said loudly enough to draw everyone's attention. "Your brother tells me you are still living in that same apartment in Wicker Park." He made it sound like I was squatting in an abandoned building rather than living in what had become one of the trendier neighborhoods in Chicago. "Yes, Dad. I like it there. The location is convenient for my work." Work," he mused, taking a deliberate sip of his wine. "And how is that going? Still writing little articles for those online blogs?" "Actually, I started seeing my opening at last." "I have some exciting news about but your cousin Jennifer," my mother interrupted, gesturing to her sister's daughter just made partner at her law firm. 32 years old and already making 7 figures. She beamed at my cousin, who had the grace to look uncomfortable. "And did you hear about the Henderson's boy?" my mother continued. "Just signed with a tech startup, stock options worth millions. He was in your grade, was not he, Juliana?" I nodded tightly. My news once again pushed aside in favor of comparing me unfavorably to my peers. This was their favorite sport, highlighting the conventional success of everyone my age, while pointedly questioning my choices. The main course arrived, and the conversation mercifully shifted to my brother Adam's recent vacation to the Maldives. I pushed my food around my plate, appetite gone, wondering why I had thought this time would be different. The familiar feelings of isolation crept over me as I sat in a room full of family, yet felt completely alone. As dessert was being served, an elaborate chocolate creation that no one would more than nibble at, my father cleared his throat. The table fell silent, as it always did when Thomas Stewart had something to say. "I would like to propose a toast," he announced, raising his glass. "To success, to this family's achievements, to Adam and his groundbreaking research." He nodded to my brother, who smiled modestly. "To Sophia and her new promotion." My sister preened. "To Diana and her record-breaking sales quarter." My mother practically glowed with satisfaction. He paused, his gaze finally landing on me. His expression shifted to something between pity and contempt. "And to Juliana," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, "who continues to follow her own path, whatever that may be." Uncomfortable chuckles rippled around the table. I felt my face burning, but maintained my composure. This was nothing new. I had weathered countless such moments. But then he went further. "Tell me, Juliana," he said, swirling his expensive scotch. "How does it feel being the most useless one here?" The table erupted in laughter. Even Aunt Patricia looked down, unwilling to challenge my father in his own home. Everyone was laughing. At me, at my dreams, at my life choices. And something inside me finally broke. In that moment, as laughter echoed around, my parents' elegant dining room time seemed to slow down. 1,000 memories flashed through my mind. The creative writing award certificate hidden in my desk drawer because my parents thought it frivolous. The night of my college newspaper award, when I called home to share my excitement, only to have my father tell me he was too busy watching Adam's medical school graduation video for the 3rd time. The Christmas morning when Sophia received a car, while I got a practical planner to organize the life they thought I should want. I remembered my therapist's words from our last session. Dr. Keller had been helping me work through my family issues for the past year. "You cannot control their behavior or make them value what you value, Juliana, but you can set boundaries about how you allow yourself to be treated. Your worth is not determined by their approval." A strange calm settled over me as I looked at my father's smug face, still expecting me to shrink, apologize, or laugh along with their cruel joke, as I had done so many times before. But I was not that same scared girl anymore. I had built a life they knew nothing about. I had found success on my own terms. And most importantly, I had finally begun to believe in my own value. I placed my napkin carefully beside my barely touched dessert. The table was quieting now, perhaps sensing something different in my demeanor. I looked directly into my father's eyes. How does it feel knowing this useless one will not be paying your bills anymore? I asked, my voice steady and clear. The silence that followed was absolute. My father's face froze, then slowly turned a dangerous shade of red. My mother's wineglass paused halfway to her lips. Adam stopped mid-chew. Sophia's eyes widened to comic proportions. "What did you just say?" My father finally sputtered, unused to being challenged, especially at his own dinner table. "I signed a book deal last week," I said, maintaining the same calm tone. "With Patterson and Schuster. They are one of the top publishing houses in the country. In case you are not familiar with the industry you have spent years belittling." I took a sip of water, savoring the moment. My whole life I had been interrupted, talked over, dismissed. For once, everyone was listening. "The advance is 6 figures," I continued. "The contract includes a 3-book deal with international distribution rights. They are already in talks with Netflix about a possible adaptation." My father regained his composure enough to scoff. "A fluke. Anyone can get lucky once." I smiled. "Interesting that you see years of hard work, persistence, and talent as luck. I have been building my career for over a decade while you were all assuming I was failing. I have a syndicated column in the Tribune. I guest a lecture at 3 universities. I have won national awards for my reporting." I reached for my purse and pulled out my phone. "Would you like to see the articles that have been written about my book deal? Or perhaps the congratulatory email from the Pulitzer Committee for my feature series on healthcare inequality?" I found that one particularly ironic, given your profession, Dad. My mother finally found her voice. "Juliana, there is no need to be dramatic. If you have had some success, we are of course happy for you, though I do not see why this means you will not help family." I turned to her. "I already help family, Mom, just not this one. For the past 3 years, I have been helping my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Gonzalez, pay for her medications. I donate 10% of my income to literacy programs in underserved communities. I fund a scholarship at Northwestern for first-generation college students in journalism. What I meant was that I will not be bailing out this family when you come asking, which, based on some industry rumors about Dad's practice and your recent property acquisitions, might be sooner than you think." My father slammed his hand on the table, making the crystal glasses jump. "How dare you come into my house and speak to us this way, after all we have done for you?" I could not help but laugh. "Done for me? Please elaborate. Was it the constant criticism, the comparison to more successful peers, the total lack of emotional or financial support? Or perhaps you mean the systematic undermining of my confidence and dreams from childhood onward? I am genuinely curious what you think you have done for me, because from where I am sitting, I have succeeded not because of your support, but despite its complete absence." My father stood up so abruptly, his chair scraped against the hardwood floor. His face was contorted with rage, a vein visibly pulsing in his forehead. I had never seen him lose control like this, especially not in front of an audience. Thomas Stewart, renowned surgeon, prided himself on his composure. "This is how you repay us," he shouted. "This is the respect you show after everything we have provided. You lived under our roof, ate our food, received an education." My mother started crying expertly, dabbing at her eyes to preserve her makeup. "Oh, Juliana, how could you be so ungrateful? We only wanted what was best for you. We pushed you because we knew you could do better." Adam jumped in, always ready to defend the family honor and his position within it. "After all they have done for you, this is how you behave. Some of us appreciate the sacrifices our parents made. Some of us understand family loyalty." Even Sophia, who usually stayed above the fray, could not resist. "I cannot believe even someone like you would be so dramatic. So you got lucky with some book. Do you have any idea how many people write books that no one ever reads?" I noticed Aunt Patricia opening her mouth, perhaps to defend me, but my father shot her a warning glance, and she closed it again. No one challenged Thomas Stewart and remained welcome in his circle. Throughout their barrage, I remained seated, breathing deeply, maintaining my composure. When they finally ran out of steam, the room fell into an uncomfortable silence. "I appreciate the roof and food," I said quietly. "Those are indeed the legal minimums required when one chooses to have children. As for education, my scholarships covered my tuition, and I worked throughout college to pay for my expenses. But thank you for the acknowledgement that those basics constitute everything you have done for me." I turned to face each family member as I continued. "Would you like to know what you have not done? You never attended a single one of my school events. Not my honor society induction, not my graduation, not even the state journalism competition when I represented my school and won first place. You forgot my 21st birthday entirely. When I called to see if we were still having dinner, you were surprised because you had all gone to Aspen for the weekend and forgotten to tell me. When I had pneumonia my second year of college, none of you visited me in the hospital. Maria, our housekeeper, was the one who brought me soup and made sure I had medications. When my apartment flooded 3 years ago, and I lost almost everything, I called asking if I could stay with you for just a few days until my insurance came through. You said you were redecorating the guest rooms, and it was not convenient. The room had grown uncomfortably silent. Even my father seemed unable to formulate a response. So no, I do not feel I owe you financial support or unquestioning respect. I have built my life without your help, and I will continue to do so." My father's face hardened. He pointed toward the door, his hand shaking slightly. "Either apologize to this family right now, or leave my house and do not come back." It was the ultimatum I had feared my entire life. The final rejection. The complete severance from my family. I had spent years contorting myself to avoid exactly this moment, accepting their cruelty and dismissal, rather than risking total abandonment. But as I looked around the table at their angry, entitled faces, I realized I had already been abandoned by them long ago. They had never truly seen me, known me, or loved me for who I was. What I was clinging to was not a real family, but the idea of one, a fantasy, that had caused me nothing but pain. I stood up, smoothed my dress, and picked up my purse. I will not be apologizing for speaking the truth or for setting boundaries. My mother gasped. "Juliana, you cannot be serious. We are your family." I walked over to my purse and took out my keychain. I removed the key to their house that I had carried for years but never used. I placed it gently on the table. Family is supposed to support, encourage, and love unconditionally. You have done none of those things. I deserve better, and I am finally brave enough to walk away until I get it. I turned and walked toward the foyer, my steps steady despite my racing heart. I could hear chairs scraping and voices rising behind me, but I did not look back. Maria stood near the front door, her eyes wide with concern. She pressed something into my hand as I passed, a small package wrapped in a napkin. For later, she whispered, "Your favorite cookies. Take care of yourself, Miss Juliana." I squeezed her hand in thanks and stepped out into the cool evening air. As I closed the heavy front door behind me, I felt as though I was closing a chapter of my life. The weight of their expectations and disappointment lifted from my shoulders with each step toward my car. Only when I was safely inside with the doors locked did I allow the tears to come. The drive home from my parents' house was a blur. Tears streamed down my face as I navigated the familiar route back to my Wicker Park apartment. The Chicago skyline glittered against the night sky, indifferent to my personal earthquake. By the time I pulled into my parking space, my eyes were swollen and my throat raw from sobbing. I climbed the 3 flights to my apartment, a converted loft in an old industrial building. It was nothing like the pristine luxury of my parents' home, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every book, every decoration represented a choice I had made for myself. This space told my story, not theirs. The moment I closed my door, my phone began buzzing with notifications. I ignored it, and instead poured myself a glass of wine with shaking hands. I curled up on my window seat, looking out at the city lights, and tried to process what had just happened. After years of enduring their criticism and emotional neglect, I had finally stood up for myself. The relief was palpable, but so was the grief. Around midnight, my best friend Taylor called. I had texted her a brief update before turning off my notifications. "Holy shit, Jules," she said when I answered. "You actually did it. You stood up to the dynasty." Taylor had witnessed the Stewart family dynamics firsthand during our college years. She had dried my tears after particularly brutal holiday visits and encouraged me to set boundaries long before I was ready. "I feel like I am floating," I told her, part liberated, part terrified. "That is because you just performed a major amputation without anesthesia," she replied. "You cut off a toxic limb. It hurts like hell, but was necessary for survival." We talked for over an hour, Taylor reminding me of all the times my family had diminished me, all the achievements they had dismissed, all the support they had withheld. By the time we hung up, I felt steadier. When I finally checked my phone the next morning, I was greeted by a barrage of messages. My brother Adam had sent a clinical detached text informing me that I would be removed from the family will and should reconsider my behavior if I wished to maintain any connection to the Stewart name. My mother had left 3 voicemails, each more tearful than the last, oscillating between guilt trips and vague accusations. Most surprising was a message from Sophia. While still clearly taking our parents' side, there was a note of reflection I had never heard from my sister before. "Maybe you have a point about some things. But did you have to be so harsh? Family is family, Jules." The most devastating communication came via email. My father ever formal had sent a message with the subject line, "Formal notice of disownment." The body contained just 3 sentences. "Following your display of disrespect and ingratitude, you are no longer welcome in our home or at family gatherings. Do not contact us or any family members until you have made a formal apology. This decision is non-negotiable." I read it 3 times, each time expecting the words to hurt less. They did not. As the day progressed, the family drama spilled onto social media. Cousins I barely spoke to posted vague statements about family loyalty. Aunts and uncles I saw once a year suddenly had strong opinions about my character. The family circled their wagons as they always did when their hierarchy was threatened. The only exception was Aunt Patricia. She sent a private message that simply read, "I was wrong not to speak up last night. Your courage has made me examine my own complicity in their behavior. When you are ready to talk, I am here. With genuine love and admiration." At work the following Monday, I tried to maintain a professional facade, but my colleague Zach noticed something was wrong. We had worked together on several major stories and had developed a solid friendship. During our lunch break, I found myself telling him everything, rather than offering platitudes about family being forever or suggesting I make amends. Zach nodded in understanding. "My parents were like that too," he said. "I cut contact 3 years ago. Best decision I ever made." He showed me a text thread with his chosen family friends who supported each other through holidays and life milestones. "You will build your own family, Jules, one that sees and values you." That afternoon, I had a scheduled meeting with Jennifer, my editor at the publishing house. I considered canceling, unsure if I could focus on book discussions while emotionally raw. But Jennifer had become more than just my editor over the past few months. She was becoming a mentor. When I walked into her office, she took one look at me and set aside her notes. "What happened?" she asked. The whole story poured out of me. Jennifer listened without interruption, her expression transitioning from shock to anger on my behalf. When I finished, she leaned forward. "Juliana, what you are going through is brutal, but I want you to know something. That book we signed, we did not sign it because we felt sorry for you, or because we were taking a chance. We fought to publish you because your voice is extraordinary. Your perspective matters. Your family may not see your worth, but the rest of the world will." In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into writing. The manuscript became my therapy, each word a brick in the wall between my past and my future. I poured my experiences onto the page, transforming pain into prose. But the emotional aftermath caught up with me in private moments. I had panic attacks in the middle of the night, waking up gasping and doubting my decision. I would reach for my phone to text my mother, only to remember we were no longer speaking. I found myself driving by my childhood home, parking across the street, and just staring at the windows. wondering what they were doing inside. The first holiday season was the hardest. Thanksgiving had always been at my parents' house Christmas Eve, at my brother's Christmas Day, back at the mansion for gifts and dinner. Now those traditions were gone, leaving gaping holes in my calendar and my heart. Taylor refused to let me spend the holidays alone. "Come to my parents," she insisted. "They always ask about you anyway." I ended up at the Johnson family Thanksgiving, surrounded by people who asked about my book with genuine interest, who refilled my wine glass without counting how many I had had, who laughed easily and touched each other's shoulders and said, "I love you," without calculation. By Christmas, Zach had organized what he called an orphan Christmas at his apartment. 8 of us gathered, all estranged from our biological families for various reasons. We cooked together, exchanged thoughtful but inexpensive gifts, and created new traditions from scratch. For the first time, I felt the holiday warmth I had always craved, but never experienced in my parents' perfectly decorated home. 6 months after the infamous dinner spring arrived in Chicago, bringing with it new beginnings. My book publication date was approaching rapidly, the marketing campaign already in full swing. My face appeared on publishing industry websites, and early reviews were overwhelmingly positive. The advance had allowed me to move to a better apartment in the same neighborhood, a sunny one-bedroom with large windows and a small balcony, where I was attempting to grow herbs. For the first time in my life, I did not have to check my bank account before making basic purchases, or worry about unexpected expenses derailing my budget. My friendship circle had solidified and expanded. Taylor remained my rock, the friend who had seen me at my worst and never judged. Zach and I had grown closer through our shared experiences with difficult families. And I had connected with Maya, another writer whose work I had long admired. She had experienced similar family dynamics and understood the complicated grief of walking away from toxic relatives. Perhaps most importantly, I had finally committed to consistent therapy. Dr. Keller specialized in family trauma and helped me understand the patterns that had shaped my self-perception. Every Tuesday afternoon, I sat in her comfortable office and untangled another knot in my past. "You have been programmed to hear your parents' voices in your head criticizing your choices and questioning your worth, doctor," Keller explained during one particularly revealing session. "Our work is to replace those voices with your own authentic voice. What would Juliana say about Juliana's choices if there had never been a Thomas or Diana Stewart?" I was learning to identify and counter negative self-talk, to recognize when I was making decisions based on fear of disapproval rather than my own desires. The process was slow and painful, but I felt myself growing stronger with each session. In a surprising development, I received an email from my estranged cousin Marcus. Like me, he had been the family outcast, choosing environmental law over the family business. He had moved to Seattle years ago and rarely returned for family events. "Heard through the family grapevine about your epic stand at dinner," he wrote. "Welcome to the dark side, cause. If you ever want to compare notes on surviving Stewart family exile, I am your guy." We began corresponding regularly, sharing stories about the family pressure cooker we had both escaped. It was validating to know I wasn't alone, that someone else understood exactly what I had experienced. Even more unexpected was the text I received from Sophia in late April. "Can we meet for coffee, just us? No mom and dad drama, I promise." Against my better judgment and Dr. Keller's cautious advice to maintain firm boundaries, I agreed to meet my sister at a neutral cafe downtown. When she arrived, I almost did not recognize her. Gone was the perfect blowout and designer outfit. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore jeans and a sweater that looked suspiciously like regular mall brands instead of luxury labels. "You look different," I observed as she sat down. She gave a tired smile. "A lot has changed since your dramatic exit." She stirred her latte nervously. "Look, I am not going to pretend I understand completely why you did what you did, but I have been thinking about some of the things you said, about how they treated you versus me and Adam." I waited, not willing to make this easier for her. Years of therapy had taught me that I did not need to fill uncomfortable silences. "I think you might have been right," she finally admitted, "about how toxic the family is. I never saw it because I was always the golden child, at least in Mom's eyes. She went on to reveal that our parents were facing financial difficulties. Dad had made some risky investments that had not panned out, and 3 of his patients had filed malpractice suits in the past year. Mom's real estate empire was struggling with the market downturn, and several of her luxury properties had been sitting unsold for months. They are freaking out, Sophia confessed. Adam, too. He bought that huge house in Lincoln Park, assuming Dad would keep funneling money his way, and now the trust fund distributions have stopped. I felt a complex mix of emotions. Vindication that my suspicions about their finances had been correct, concern for the real people behind the facades, and wariness about why Sophia was telling me all this. They asked me to talk to you, she admitted, confirming my suspicion. They want to know if you would be willing to help out financially, just until they get back on their feet. I nearly knocked over my coffee cup. You cannot be serious. After everything they said and did, they expect me to bail them out. Sophia had the grace to look embarrassed. I told them it was a long shot. But they are desperate, Jules. Dad might lose his practice. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts before responding. I am not giving them money, Sophia. Not now, not ever. That would just enable more of the same behavior that has been so destructive. But I am willing to stay in touch with you if you genuinely want a relationship separate from them. She looked surprised, as if she had expected either a flat refusal or immediate capitulation. I had always been the emotional one, the easy target. This new boundary-setting Juliana was unfamiliar territory. I would like that, she said hesitantly. I have missed you, and I have been thinking that maybe I need to make some changes too. Seeing how quickly they turned on you when you stopped playing by their rules was pretty eye-opening. We parted with a tentative hug, the first genuine physical contact we had shared in years. I had no illusions that our relationship would magically transform overnight, but it felt like a tiny seedling of something authentic had been planted. My book launch event was held at a popular independent bookstore in downtown Chicago. The space was packed with publishing industry people, fellow writers, friends, and readers who had connected with my online essays. Conspicuously absent was any member of my biological family. I had sent invitations not expecting attendance, but wanting them to know what they were missing. Instead, the front row was filled with my chosen family. Taylor and her parents, Zach and his partner Maya Jennifer, my editor Dr. Keller, who had made an exception to her usual professional boundaries to support this milestone. Even Maria, who had quit working for my parents and sent me her new address. As I read passages from my book to enthusiastic applause, I realized I had never felt more seen or supported. The success that followed over the next few months only reinforced that feeling. The book became a bestseller, resonating particularly with readers who had experienced similar family dynamics. I received hundreds of messages from people who said my words had given them courage to set boundaries in their own lives. My first major speaking engagement came as a surprise. A women's leadership conference in New York invited me to deliver a keynote on emotional resilience and authentic success. Standing at that podium, looking out at a sea of attentive faces, I felt a confidence I had never known before. I was no longer the family disappointment or the ignored middle child. I was Juliana Stewart, author and voice for those who had been silenced. 1 year after the dinner that had changed everything, my life was almost unrecognizable. My book had spent 20 weeks on the bestseller list, and I had just turned in the manuscript for my second book. The Netflix adaptation was officially in development. I had purchased a small but charming condo in a neighborhood I loved, my first real home, that belonged entirely to me. My community of friends had become the family I had always wanted. We celebrated holidays together, supported each other through challenges, and cheered each other's successes without competition or conditions. I had even started dating someone who valued my ambition and creativity, instead of seeing it as a character flaw. Then came the email that sent me spiraling back into the emotional chaos I thought I had escaped. My father, who had not communicated directly with me since his disownment email, sent a brief message after seeing me interviewed on a major morning show. Your mother and I would like to meet to discuss reconciliation. Family should not remain divided. Let us know when you are available. No acknowledgement of wrongdoing. No apology for years of emotional abuse. Just an expectation that I would jump at the chance to be readmitted to their presence. I brought the email to my next therapy session, watching as Dr. Keller read it carefully. "What are you thinking?" she asked after a long pause. "Those are both valid reactions," she said. "The question is not what you should do to please them or anyone else, but what serves your healing and well-being. You can engage on your terms with strong boundaries, or you can decide that no contact remains the healthiest choice." After much reflection, I decided to respond. I would meet them, but on my territory and with clear parameters. I suggested a public restaurant limited to a 1-hour lunch. I also made it clear that any reconciliation would require acknowledgement of past behavior and commitment to change. To my surprise, they agreed. The meeting was set for the following Sunday. I arrived early, selecting a table with a clear view of the entrance. My parents walked in precisely on time, my father scanning the restaurant like he was expecting to find fault, my mother nervously adjusting her scarf. They looked older, somehow less intimidating than I remembered. Our greeting was awkward, none of us quite knowing the social protocol for reuniting after such a dramatic estrangement. We ordered drinks and made painful small talk about the weather until our food arrived. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "Juliana," he began in his authoritative doctor voice, "we have given this situation much thought. Family unity is important to us. We would like to put this unfortunate incident behind us and move forward." I sipped my water, giving myself time to control my reaction. This so-called unfortunate incident being years of emotional abuse, followed by explicitly disowning me. My mother jumped in. "We have always wanted what's best for you, Juliana. Perhaps our methods were sometimes harsh, but our intentions were good." I had prepared for this moment, rehearsing my response with Dr. Keller. "I appreciate you reaching out, but reconciliation requires more than just moving forward as if nothing happened. It requires accountability and changed behavior." My father's jaw tightened, but he seemed to be making an effort to control his typical angry response. "We are willing to acknowledge that we may have been overly critical at times. May have been. At times." The minimization was so predictable I almost laughed. "Let me be clear about my boundaries," I said calmly. "I am open to rebuilding a relationship, but it will be a new one based on mutual respect. I will not tolerate criticism of my career, my choices, or my life. I will not subject myself to comparisons with Adam or Sophia or anyone else, and I will leave any interaction that becomes toxic without explanation or apology." My father looked like he had swallowed something sour, but he nodded stiffly. My mother seemed more genuinely reflective. "I missed your book launch," she said quietly. "I wanted to go, but your father—" She stopped herself, seemingly aware she was falling back into old patterns of blaming others. I should have gone regardless. The reviews were impressive. It was the closest thing to genuine acknowledgement I had ever received from her. A tiny crack in the perfect Stewart family facade. We agreed to proceed with caution, small time-limited interactions that could be built upon if they went well. No expectations of immediate intimacy or trust. A relationship that would need to be earned rather than demanded. The first test came at Thanksgiving. I invited them to my condo along with Sophia, who had been making genuine efforts to develop a healthier relationship with me. Adam declined, still firmly entrenched in the family hierarchy and unwilling to acknowledge any dysfunction. Hosting my parents in my space on my terms was both terrifying and empowering. I watched my father bite back comments about my decorating choices, and my mother stop herself from reorganizing my kitchen. Small victories, but meaningful ones. Dinner was uncomfortable but civil. The conversation remained superficial, everyone carefully avoiding potential landmines. When my father made one dismissive comment about a political figure I admired, I calmly reminded him of our agreement. He actually apologized, shocking everyone at the table. As they prepared to leave, my mother lingered in the entryway. "Your home is lovely, Juliana," she said, sounding surprisingly genuine. "It feels warm, comfortable, like you." I realized she was trying in her limited way to see me as I was, rather than as she wished I would be. The journey would be long, and I harbored no illusions that they would ever fully become the parents I had needed. But perhaps we could build something new from the ashes of what had been destroyed. The path of healing is rarely straight or simple. In the year since that fateful dinner, I had experienced crushing pain, liberating joy, paralyzing fear, and profound peace, sometimes all within the same day. I had learned that standing up for yourself does not always feel triumphant in the moment, that setting boundaries often hurts before it heals, that grief and growth are intertwined. Most importantly, I had discovered my own worth separate from family approval or external validation. The quiet voice inside that had always known I was enough had finally grown loud enough to drown out the critical chorus that had dominated my early life. Success, I realized, was not measured in bestseller lists or bank accounts, though those were satisfying. True success was building a life that honored my authentic self, surrounding myself with people who celebrated, rather than diminished me, and finding the courage to speak my truth, even when it would have been easier to remain silent. If you are in a relationship that requires you to make yourself smaller, to be accepted, whether family, romantic, or friendship, please know that you deserve better. Your worth is not determined by others' acceptance of you. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from what hurts you, even when that means leaving behind what you thought you needed. I would love to hear your stories of standing up for yourself or setting boundaries with difficult people in your life. What gave you the courage to finally say enough? Please share in the comments below, and do not forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. I read every comment and am continually inspired by this community's strength and wisdom. Thank you for listening, and remember that your story matters even when others try to silence it.